Hare Krishna. My name is Ali Krishna Das. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here at ISKCON Salem, and I've been asked to speak a little bit about how I came to Krishna Consciousness, how I've started practicing, and I'll give a brief history of my life and how I've come to this point. So, like I said, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. It's in the southern part of the United States, which is famous for being Christian. We live in something called the Bible Belt. So there's a series of states that are very, religiously oriented towards Christianity. And I was born in a Christian family, like many other people there. And growing up, had a pretty normal middle-class American childhood, living in the suburbs, going to public school, playing outside, having friends and all these kinds of things, playing video games, playing sports, played basketball, baseball, tennis, all kinds of different sports. And had one younger sister, one younger brother. I was the oldest of three. And yeah, it was a pretty standard, normal, middle-class upbringing. My father worked in banking. My mother was a teacher. And so we always had all the comforts that we wanted. We never had to, want for anything. We were never feeling a need for anything. I was always given all the clothing I needed, all the food I needed. Everything was always provided for me. So I had a very comfortable upbringing in that way. And my parents worked very hard for that. And so, yeah, I was very privileged. Now, growing up in this family, of course, we were going to church often. Not so much, but generally in America, the standard is perhaps you go every week, perhaps you go once a month, or the more standard is that you are called, I can't remember the exact, there's a term for it, but Christmas, CEOs, CEOs, Christmas and Easter only. So 2 times a year, Christmas and Easter, the 2 biggest Christian holidays, go to church. So sometimes we were in that category, sometimes we'd be in the category of going every week. And when I became maybe around 12 or 13, around that age, I started getting more interested in who is God, understanding the nature of reality and who I am, why are we here, these kind of things. And I would start going to church every week on my own, usually they had youth preaching programs, so I would just go for the youth night and socialize with friends and also kind of try to learn something more about God. And since a young age, I remember very distinctly that I always had a curiosity about these kind of things that others around me didn't quite have. So I remember asking my parents, as a very young child, maybe 5 or 6, just asking them, just being bewildered by existence itself and wondering, how are we existing in this body? What is consciousness? What is the nature of reality? These kind of questions were popping in my mind, and not in such a sophisticated way, but just I became bewildered and questioned reality and how is it that we're living and how are we conscious and what is the mind? All these kind of weird thoughts would come, and my parents would brush it off and not have any answer for me, and just, it's something that I could tell that they weren't thinking about, other people around me weren't thinking about, so I just kind of ignored it. But it kept cropping up over and over again over time. Now I just ignored it at that time and continued on in my life, and I got really into music in high school. I started playing the saxophone, and I got quite good at it. I ended up becoming first chair in the state for jazz saxophone. So I got very, very dedicated to that, and this level of creativity, artistic expression, and I ended up getting into colleges with a scholarship for doing that. So I went to college, but I quickly learned that and realized that I didn't want to do that my whole life, just play saxophone. It just felt too limiting, limiting, and ultimately just I wanted to do other things in my life. And so in college, I switched my major to philosophy because, again, I was thinking, what are the deeper answers in life? Maybe this has the answers. Maybe philosophers have found the truth of life. And I wasn't thinking so much about what is my job going to be? How am I going to make a living? I just wanted answers in life. And around this time, same time actually, or just before graduating high school, I'd gone from, like I said, going to church every weekend, learning a little bit more about Jesus, but never really diving super deep into it. I never actually read the whole Bible or anything. But I remember asking certain questions like, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is death there? Why do we have to die? Why is this world seems like a lot of misery is going on in it? And why is that there if God is all good? And why are some people born in such horrible poverty-stricken conditions? And I'm in a very privileged position, like I mentioned before. I recognized that pretty early on, that I'm very privileged, and some child born in Africa, for example, might be very poor. And I'd seen, of course, you see growing up all kinds of imagery and advertisements of starving children in Africa and here in different places. So that struck me, and I thought, how is God all fair and all loving if that's happening? That doesn't make any sense. And nobody at the church, my parents, nobody I talked to within Christianity could answer those questions. And so I became kind of skeptical, jaded, anti-religion at that point. And at the same time, going on at the exact same time, was the very atheistic teaching going on in public schools and schools, the school system, of learning about evolution, learning about the Big Bang, learning about all these things. And science has the answers. Science can cure diseases. Science can help people. So I thought, well, seems like science is doing a lot more than religion to help people. So maybe I should, kind of adhere more to this side of things and become more of a. And I became an atheist, and I became completely skeptical of all religion. I thought it's all a scam, actually. Another big thing in America that happens is these mega churches and these super rich pastors, like Joel Osteen, and he's like the only one I really know of. But I mean, there's so many. I don't know the other names, but these people, they exploit this Christianity to get rich, and they get private jets, and they live like these tech billionaires, same way, but they advertise themselves as godly men. So all these kind of things added up, and the scientific brainwashing and the inability for Christianity to answer deeper questions, all this added up to me saying religion is bogus and science is the right way. So going into college, I remember being very, very just like staunch atheist. I remember like even just joking about how could people believe in God? They're so stupid. Like I hated everything to do with religion. And if anybody's ever had that mindset, they'll understand that it leads to a very depressing life, because you think that everything is matter. Everything is just, there's no meaning to life. There's no purpose. We're here for this temporary, amount of time, 70, 80 years, and then we die and we stop existing. And so there's not much reason to live. There's not much joy in life anymore at that point. And so after some time in that, I started again questioning. And I remember being in college my first year, and I started looking into Buddhism for some reason. I just was attracted to that. Or Eastern thought, the Tao and Buddhism and this kind of thing. And I don't even remember exactly what I was finding or reading. I found maybe one or two books about meditation, and maybe looked up some stuff online, learned about the benefits of meditation, and in a very non-religious way, just a very scientific way, again, that see the scientific benefits on your mental health of meditating and mindfulness meditation, these kind of things. But I started looking into that a little bit, and I would try meditating for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and some benefit. I felt, okay, my mind is more calm. I'm feeling, less anxiety, that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, that's interesting, that's cool. But I didn't think much of it at that time. At the same time, I started getting more into, I started actually writing music and creating music myself. Instead of playing saxophone, I was learning keyboard, and I was learning how to make music on a computer, music production. And so I got really into that. My roommates and I started a band, and we started making music and playing gigs and stuff like that. And yeah, and then when you're in that that realm of things, one thing a lot of musicians do is they like to take drugs. So luckily, I never did anything super hardcore like heroin or anything like that. But I was, big pothead, smoking weed, and the thing that really kind of changed a lot of my mindset was starting to take psychedelics, which I don't recommend necessarily for people, but I've found that, of course, it's a material thing. It's made of matter, so you can't have any spiritual experience on them. But what it does is it shifts your mindset in such a way, and it opens up new levels of perception that you don't have when you're not on those things. And so I remember one day, the first time I took mushrooms, and we went to this famous park in Atlanta that actually is actually a tirtha because Prabhupada went there, Piedmont Park. And I went there, and I was, just laying down on the grass, and I just felt, it's hard to describe it in words, but what you're perceiving consciously just becomes completely more vivid and expanded from your sober consciousness, and you start having very deep thoughts and all this kind of stuff. And that happened. That it was a pretty interesting experience, and I thought, well, there's more to life than just this regular, sober thing that I've experienced. I've been in this box my whole life, and then I just opened that box and I just expanded that box to something else, and I'm experiencing something completely different than anything I've ever experienced. So okay, so I understood there's something deeper to life than just this base consciousness that we're on, right? And so this kind of opened up a box, you could say, of curiosity. Well, what other states of consciousness are there? How much more is there to life than just this, box that we're in, that we're told, go to school, get a job, work 9 to 5, get married, have kids, have a house, everything, boom, 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 boom. And this kind of just track that we're on with these guardrails, and we're pushed down it. And I was looking, I was like, oh, there must be something outside those guardrails on either, there's more out in the world other than just this narrow path that they're being pushed down. So I became very curious about that. And I wasn't like doing these drugs all the time. It was like once or twice a year I would do it. But every single time it would, again, make me think, wow, this is something deeper to life is there, and I should continue looking for answers. I shouldn't just be okay with that narrow path that I talked about before. I should find something more in life and search for answers. I need to find, who am I? Why are we existing? What is consciousness? All these kind of things. I was very focused on that, thinking about that a lot. At the same time, I was partying, making music, having a good time in college, all that stuff that an American college kid does. So after some time, I just became completely disillusioned with college, and I realized this is just a big scam. I'm not going to get anything out of it. I switched from philosophy to political science because I thought, philosophy is not practical. I need to do something that I can make money. But then I was also thinking about switching my major again, but I was like, well, I might as well just drop out because I'm switching my major. I'm just going to end up in here for like 10 years. Might as well I know I don't want to do this. And I thought at the time I want to do music. I was really into music, and I wanted to do something with music. So I don't need college for that. I can just drop out and do music. And so I dropped out after 3 years of college, and I moved back to my parents' house. And then I was kind of going through well, what do I do? I can't make money with music right now, so I have to work something. But I don't want to just work in some, restaurant or something where I make very little money. I need to make some kind of money. And I ended up finding this course. It was a 10-week course in person where we learned about web design, UX design it's called. And so I went and took that, and it was really, really good experience for me. I really excelled in the course and made some good friends. And this course was much more designed for like practically getting you a job instead of like college, which is just doesn't help you get a job at all. But within 10 weeks, I was basically trained up to work in this industry, in the tech industry, web design. And a friend of mine was moving to Colorado at that time. He had just graduated from college. He was like my best friend from high school. And he was moving to Colorado, and he said, hey, you want to come out with me, and we'll be roommates, and we'll get a place, and you can look for a job in the web design industry. And yeah, we also made music together. That's the other thing. We were kind of collaboration partners in music. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity. Denver is a great place for music, and it's also got a good scene for working in that industry, and also had a good scene for this more like spirituality and meditation. There's a lot of spiritual people there, and ashrams and all kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, perfect. Let's go. I was ready to get out of the South. The South is very, like I said, Christian, very conservative, and just very everyone's going down that same path that I talked about. And I knew I want to get out of here. I want to go somewhere else and experience life somewhere else. So I moved to Denver with my dog, and moved in with my friend there. We got a house, and pretty much right upon moving there, actually, I found this book. My friend gave it to me. Actually, it was this book, "Be Here Now" by Ram Dass, which is he's a Mayavadi. He speaks a lot of bogus stuff, but somehow I've heard of actually a lot of devotees read that book before they became devotees, because one thing that's interesting in there, I guess it's to his benefit, is that he keeps talking about the Bhagavad Gita in that book. And he's saying wrong things about the Bhagavad Gita, but he's talking about the Bhagavad Gita. And at the very end of the book, there's a huge list of books, like his top recommendations, his secondary, third, and his very top recommendations, there's like 100 books on that. But the number one book, he goes in order. So like he ranks, like you should read this book first, then this book, then this book. The very number one book in all of his 1,000 books that he recommended is Bhagavad Gita. So I said, okay. And so actually I ordered like the top 10, and I was like, I'm going to read all of these, because I was hungry. I was searching. But I ordered that Bhagavad Gita first, and I went on Amazon, and the first result was Bhagavad Gita as it is. And so I ordered that, of course, and that came in the mail. And then I opened it up, and I started seeing Dhritarashtra, which I couldn't even pronounce that, Dhritarashtra and Sanjay and all these, like all this Sanskrit, and I was like, what the heck? I don't know any of this. I didn't read the introduction. I should have read the introduction. I just skipped ahead, and I was like, let me just go to the first chapter. And it's just completely confusing. I was like, what does this have to do with, spiritual life? It's just a story about some names I don't understand. They're on a battlefield, okay. And so I just closed it. But before I closed it, actually, I was looking through it, and I saw the very end of the book. There's one page, ISKCON Centers Around the World. And so I saw that, and I saw, look, Denver, okay. And I looked up on Google Maps, and it was about 10 minutes away from me. So just right down the road. And I thought, oh, that's cool. So I looked at their website, and it said, daily schedule, this and that, and 5:15 a.m. japa meditation. So I was like, oh, I Googled japa meditation. Okay, it's a mantra. Okay. And again, I'd heard about mantras and stuff from these other books and Ram Dass and all this stuff that you chant these mantras and it's beneficial. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So let me check that out. So me and my friend Matt is his name. He was also into it. We were both into it at the same time. And we're like, all right, well, we have to go into our office at 9 a.m., but why don't we wake up early? We'll wake up at like 4:30 and we'll go and just show up at this temple, because it says it's open to the public and it says there's meditation. So let's just go show up there and see what happens. So we drove there one day, and showed up right at 5:15. We walked in, and it was like, it's dark, and Immediately we could smell the incense, and immediately upon walking into that building, the temple, I felt, whoa, I'm in a different world here. This is like very amazing. And it just, I was transported, and this shadowy figure in the dark walked up to us and wearing orange robes, and he just quietly talked to us and said, hey, how are y'all? And where are you coming from? What do you want to do here? And then we told him, we're going to learn this meditation. He said, okay, come. He gave us Japamala, and he sat us down, taught us how to chant. And we sat there and chanted for probably an hour and a half or so. So maybe we had to leave for work, but we chanted, maybe 6-8 rounds, something like that. And immediately I felt, wow, I was at work that day, and I feel way different than I usually feel. Way different. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, but let me keep trying it. So we would go 2 or 3 times a week like that, back to the temple. And again, every single time, when I wouldn't go, I would feel lower. When I would go, I'd feel, I feel some kind of like higher consciousness there. And he didn't explain to me that these are the names of God. He didn't explain that Krishna meant all attractive, that Hare meant energy of God, Rama meant reservoir of pleasure, nothing like that. He didn't explain it at all, actually, what it meant. And he didn't explain that this is a prayer that we're asking to serve Krishna and reawaken our true state as his eternal servant, and that we're not the body. None of that was in my mind. It's just trying to hear the name. He just said, just try to hear the names. So I was doing that with no philosophical understanding. And we were going 2-3 times a week, and it was good. Then we went to the Sunday feast one time. Now, at the same time that I'd moved to Denver, I'd also gotten a girlfriend. I met some girl and started dating her. And so this time, before it was just me and my friend that would go. And this time we was like, my girlfriend can come too. So all 3 of us went. And when we got there, we were taking the feast, and one of the brahmacharis that I never met, I don't think, he walked up to me, and he had a Brahmacharya and Krishna Consciousness book by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj. And he didn't say anything to me. While I was taking prasadam, he just handed me that book and walked away. And I was like, okay, what is this? So we went back to our house, and me and my girlfriend were like, oh, let's look at this book. We got this book from this monk. This looks pretty cool. So we looked it up. We started reading it, and we're like, whoa. This is saying that sex is the most, horrible thing in this world, and it's just, it should be avoided at all costs, and it'll just destroy your spiritual life. And I was like, whoa. It just was way too heavy for me. It just just slapped me, and we were both like, oh no, this is crazy. And so I closed the book, and I said, well, I don't think I'm going to go back to that temple anytime soon. They're telling me to do that. So I wanted to continue engaging in all my nonsense and also be spiritual at the same time. I thought, yeah, I can do both. Why not? And then, of course, I, like anybody that thinks that way, I went down the path of Mayavad and started thinking, oh yeah, well, it's all good. Everything's one. So many different paths. They lead to the same goal. And I can learn. I can do this in personal meditation, this kind of thing. And so I started reading. I just continued on my nonsense. I was reading all kind of books, whatever was there, whatever I could find from that list in that Ram Dass book. I was reading all these kind of things, and I was hanging out with spiritual people. And this went on for quite some time, for years. After about a year of working in that office, I actually, my friend Matt, actually something crazy happened because his brother, he had a younger brother, and his younger brother passed away suddenly. And so, again, I was kind of shocked into thinking about the temporality of this life and the urgency of finding some answers. Even though I had found the answers in Krishna Consciousness already, I just wasn't ready to accept them. I wasn't ready to accept that you have to follow some rules and regulations in order to make advancement. But still, I was like, whoa, I need to do something. that job that I was working was, it's a typical office job, just soul sucking, and there's no fulfillment in it, but you're making good money. So you become numb to it. And I thought, I can't do this. I gotta like make some change in my life and go out and search for more answers. So I had some money saved up. I quit my job and bought a van, and I turned it into a camper van, built it out so I could sleep in it. And me, my friend Matt, my girlfriend, and my dog, we all got in and we traveled around for like 6 months. We traveled all over the country. Went to all these national parks, and we were going to different temples and places. There's this place in California called Mount Shasta. It's a very spiritual place, and it's just all these spiritual people there and all kind of stuff. So we were just traveling around, reading books, meditating, searching for answers. And then when I got back to Colorado after that, I'd kind of run out of money, and Matt had to go back to work, and so I was thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And I decided there's no way I can work in another office job. No way. I'm not going to do that. So I was like, well, I don't have much option. So I decided, I guess I have to start my own business and do something myself, work for myself at least. At least that will be better than working for someone else and working in an office a job I hate. So I started searching for that. I started, well, what am I going to do? And very strangely, just kind of magically, I met this guy named Mike. He was a builder. He built tiny homes. And like I said, I just finished this van trip, so I was thinking about camper vans. And it's back then, this is before COVID and all that, and it's a big trend coming on is this van life, living in a van. And so I thought, well, I had some experience in marketing and web design and sales and that kind of thing. And he knew how to build tiny homes. So I said, hey, why don't we try to start a business where we build these vans out instead of tiny homes? And he was working for someone else. He wanted to quit that anyway. So he quit his job. Well, before he quit his job, we just posted an ad online on Craigslist, which is like a free platform. You can post, your cars for sale or whatever, have them selling this Xbox, whatever. And so we just posted, hey, we'll build you a van, just contact us. And this guy builds tiny homes. These are pictures of his builds, and yeah, contact us. So we immediately got like 30 calls. And so instantly we were booked for like a year. And we're like, okay, well, I guess this is it. It was like a gold rush, we're just like, whoa. So immediately we had a business up and running within like a week or something like that. And yeah, I dedicated the next like 3-4 years of my life to helping build that. And the other thing about this Mike is he was also very spiritual. And he had this huge Shiva lingam in his house, and he would do this elaborate like hour-long puja every day. He was a white guy, but he had some guru that he had gone to India and learned all these things. And so it was some very elaborate worship he was doing, Shiva lingam worship, and then he would speak some Mayavad philosophy, whatever. And I remember he would cook dosas and chutney, so I got exposed to some of this Indian cuisine. But during work, when we were working, it was at his house. So he had a house with a shop, and it was like just a small setup, just us two working. But every day he would have a speaker in the shop, and he would just blast Ainja Prabhu kirtans all day, like 8 hours a day. And we were just jamming out, it was like, I was loving it. And I would sometimes come, after work, we would sit down and do some kirtan. And, so I was like, oh, and I remember driving around, I would listen to all kind of karmi music, but I would also sometimes like listen to Ainja Prabhu. And I was like, I just got really into like listening to this kirtan. And so years and years of hearing that. And I would also kept my japamala that whole time. I had it all those years. I kept my japamala, and it became my kind of preferred method of meditation, you could say. I would do some kind of like silent meditation, just sit there and observe my breath, but I'd always go back to chanting. I liked chanting a lot. So throughout those years, I was doing that as well. And then one after the other, after a few years of like living in this kind of half-baked state, one after the other, all of my biggest attachments got kind of ripped away from me. So my dog suddenly died. He got sick and died one day. Then my business, Mike, one day he just took all the money in the bank account and just left. He just completely left the shop, and I think he went to New Jersey or something. He just went across the country, just left, took his family, everything. Just completely took all the money that was in the bank account. And so that was just gone. And then my girlfriend of 6 years dumped me, and anyways, that was a whole other episode that I won't go into, but that was a very dramatic thing that happened there. So all three, boom, boom, boom. And I was just left with, okay, I have all these things that I thought were making me happy, you know, my job situation, I have my girlfriend, we were living together, everything. All this was completely ripped away from me within the span of like 6 months or something. Boom, boom, boom. And so again, just like I said before, when my friend's brother, his younger brother, had passed away, I was kind of jolted into a state of, I need to do something with my life. This was like that on steroids, you know. And I realized, well, I can't keep living this way. I've always known, and I had been thinking, I was like, I would love to, like, you know, go visit an ashram and like go to India and learn more about this stuff, but I just don't know how. I don't know who to approach about it. And yeah, I was thinking, well, I'm in this situation now. I should just continue on and doing like what I'm doing. But when my situation completely changed like that, suddenly I thought, well, here's my chance, you know. It was really painful, but this seems like the best chance to do this. And I was praying to God at that point. I was like, man, you know, I'm suffering like anything. Please help me, like show me what can I do. And I started again learning more of fell into learning more about some bogus gurus and things like that. I won't go into super details with that, but one thing that I learned was this concept of devotional service. I never heard that before, devotional service. And the bogus gurus that I was listening to and following were saying, oh, you can just go, you know, feed the homeless and help other people and this kind of thing. And that's devotional service if you do it with devotion. And so I would actually do that. After this all happened, I would go. So I lost my source of income with my business, but I was actually, I was making a lot of money from trading crypto. So I would just sit on my computer all day and just trade, you know, crypto, meme coins and all this stuff. And I was supporting myself like that. And so I had a lot of extra income. And so what I would do is I would go to a nearby city and buy a bunch of burritos, like vegetarian burritos at the restaurant there. And I would just go to the park and hand them out to homeless people. And I would do that like twice a week or something. And then I also got into this, there's like a homeless shelter in Denver, and I would go and cook like a whole meal for them. You know, just some like pasta or like some simple meal. I would cook a big, huge tray of it and go into the shelter and serve it out to them. And I thought, oh, this is devotional service. Okay, like this is what it's about. And this is how I advance spiritually. So I had some kind of inkling of an idea of, oh, I should do service. Like that's what's going to make me happy, not that I get a bunch of money or I acquire the girlfriend, the business, and this and that, and then that's the material situation. I realized that's not going to make me happy. So I have to do some selfless service. But again, it was misguided in the wrong way. But I had that kind of conception. Now, fast forward a little bit, my lease ended in Denver, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go back home, and I'm going back to Georgia, and I'm going to kind of reorient myself, and eventually I want to just go to India. Like I want to get some money together and get my passport and go to India and really dive into this stuff. So I went back to Atlanta. I was there for a few months and figuring out what to do, working a little bit, trying to get some money, doing more of this trading, stuff like that. And right before I was about to go like apply for my passport and get that going, but I was like, well, let me just one day I just had the thought, and I hadn't been to that. I mean, like I said before, I went to ISKCON. That was in 2016. So yeah, 10 years ago, I'd gone, and I went back then maybe like less than 10 times. And I hadn't been to an ISKCON temple since then. I hadn't really been to any temples since then. A few temples on that van trip that I talked about, but just random ashrams and temples that weren't ISKCON. But one day before I was like, well, I'm going to go to India. This is a huge commitment, but let me just see if there's any temples here in Atlanta that I could just visit for a day before I go to India, and just do something, at least do something spiritual before I go. So I just Googled Krishna temple, and I don't really know why. I just did that, Krishna temple, and so two things popped up on Google: ISKCON Atlanta and Krishna Life. And I was like, okay. I was like, ISKCON, yeah, I know ISKCON. So I just felt like, okay, that's like something I've already, but what is Krishna Life? So I was immediately like, oh, what is that? I clicked on Krishna Life, and I saw their website that Chandanacharya Prabhu had put together, where it's an old website, it's not there anymore, but it had videos of devotees like Matsya Prabhu, I think Mitravan Prabhu was on there, just different devotees. And they were just giving little 2-minute videos. Hey, this is what it's like here. It's really awesome. I get to be around a group of guys that are like the same age as me, and we're all interested in spiritual life, and we're learning about Krishna, and we're studying the books, we're chanting, we're doing the all of our morning program, and it's really great. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And I thought, well, it was Saturday when I did that, and then next day was a Sunday feast. So I said, okay, well, let me drive down there. And it was about an hour and a half away. So I was like, all right, let me just do it. So next day, got in my car, drove down there, made it for the Sunday feast. And I remember walking in, and I get there, and it's like this old church building, and it looks kind of like, it's in a not so great part of town. I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. But anyways, I wasn't thinking too much about it. I walked in, and Mahotsa Prabhu was there, greeting at the door. And if you ever met Mahotsa Prabhu, he's the most enthusiastic person you'll ever meet. He immediately just acted like we were like best friends, like he knew me forever. He's like, yo, man, what's up, dude? How you doing? And then, he gave me a hug, and like we just talked for like a minute or something. And he's like, how old are you? I was 28 at the time. He's like, okay. And he's like, yeah. He's like, asking me about why I came there. I was like, yeah, I just told him a little bit about my background. And I was like, okay, that's it. I left that, and I went and sat down, and I was like, wow, that person was so like, that's different. That person is different than anybody I've ever met. Immediately I could tell that. And so I sat down, and then he comes up and gets on the Vyasa-san, Mahotsa Prabhu, and he starts, if you've heard his classes, he's heavy preaching, and he's speaking so quickly, and he's quoting so many verses, and I was completely blown away. I was like, wow. And he was just cutting through all my nonsense, all my misconceptions. And I was like, whoa, this person is like something else. And right after that, we had the kirtan, the stand-up kirtan. And that was like I said, I was into kirtan already. I liked kirtan. But then that was like, all the brahmacharis were jumping and dancing. I got up there with them, and we're all dancing and jumping. I was like, whoa, I never experienced that. Because when I had gone to the ISKCON before, I don't think I'd ever really been in the kirtan, because I'd only go for like that japa period, and I had to go to work. And I meant for the Sunday feast like once or twice, but it wasn't a fired up kirtan like that. It was like a Sunday feast kirtan with a bunch of like congregation. They were just kind of like there. But this was like fired up, all the brahmacharis, and I was like, whoa. Immediately I was like, this is crazy. And then got in line for the feast, and it was just like 15 preps, and like Mitravan and Kokibu, I think, cooked that day. And just so many amazing. I was like, whoa. Sat down to take that, and then Chandanacharya Prabhu and Mahotsa Prabhu sat down with me, and they just started preaching to me, telling me. And I was saying, oh, I'm into like Advaita Vedanta and all this non-duality, and it's like, no, this is why that's nonsense, blah 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 blah. And they started like just chopping, cutting me like anything. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, I could have. But potentially the outcome could have been that I just got fried out, and I was like, no, what is this? Like, you guys are like just, attacking me or something. But no, I was at least in a humble enough state because of how much suffering I'd been through just before that I was like, okay, maybe, yeah, I guess they're right. It sounds, everything they were saying made complete sense. Like I remember one thing that they said that really just convinced me immediately was that you think that the Supreme is impersonal, but you are a person, right? So you have a personality, you have individuality, you have likes and dislikes and all these things. And you're saying that that which is supreme doesn't have those things. That means you have something that God doesn't have. And I immediately was like, of course not. Yeah, that makes complete sense. I don't have anything. God has everything I have and so much more. So he must have personality too. I have that as well. It just made complete sense. And I was like, yep, that's it. Totally. Of course, I hung on to some impersonalist and Mayavadi conceptions after that. But that was one thing that just really like hit me like, wow, so clear, so simple, and made so much sense. And so right after that, we finished the feast. Chandanacharya was like, let me take you around, show you the ashram, give you a little tour. He took me, and then he sat me down in the ashram and he started preaching to me again for like an hour. Boom, boom, boom. And then he was like, why don't you just come and we have a 3-month program starting where we're going to be traveling all over the country, and it's going to be really awesome. And the first month we'll teach you all the basics. We'll teach you like the behavior, the program, how to do your sadhana and everything. And then the second month we'll take you around, travel around the country. That third month you'll go on book distribution. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I could do it, yeah. But at the same time, I was like I said, I was trading and things like that. But I was also starting it was like a startup, I guess you could say, in that industry, in like the crypto NFT industry. I just started a project in there, and it was actually going decently well. I was getting a little bit of funding, and things were going, and things were progressing in that way. So I was like, well, yeah, I could do it. But let me just kind of wrap up what I'm doing with this business. Give me like a couple weeks to finish that up and kind of tie some loose ends, and then I can come here and I'll come stay. And I completely was gonna do that. Like I was intending to do that completely. But Chandra said, "No man, why don't you just come tomorrow? Why don't you just move in tomorrow?" I was like, I don't know, man. That sounds like really quick. So yeah, just do it. It's fine. He's like, you can bring your computer. You can do all this stuff that you're talking about from here. You can just work from here. Like you can, whatever work you need to do here, you can do that. And then the rest of the time you can like be with us and like hang out and do this, we'll train you and stuff. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. That I was like, yeah, sounds better to live here than live with my parents anyway. So might as well. And so I did it. I just, I went home and I told my parents, hey, I'm leaving tonight. I'm going to stay at this ashram for 3 months and see what it's like. And I'll be back after that. I'm just gonna do a 3-month training thing. And my mom started crying and she was freaked out. And then the morning I woke up and I was gonna leave. I was leaving at like 5 in the morning to go. And my mom was there. She was like, I don't even know if she slept that night, but she was like crying and saying, no, don't do it. I'm like, no, I have to do it. I have to do it. So it was something that, it was something I knew I had to do. And so I immediately drove down, got to the temple and walked in, and that was it. I haven't left since then. It's been, now it's been a little bit more than 3 months. It's been over 3.5 years. So anyway, my parents are kind of okay with it now. So they're still like, I still see them. I go visit them often. So it's not like I've completely just abandoned that entire relationship. That's that's another misconception, but that's still there. I still see them, and they're kind of accepting that. They accepted that, okay, like before in my life, I would go from this thing to that thing. Like you can see, I dropped out of college. I couldn't do college. I worked that one job for a year. I hated it. And then I worked another. I started a business that didn't work, and then I was going to go to India. So I've always kind of hopped from thing to thing. But now they've seen that I've been doing this for so long, and they've accepted that. My mom told me, okay, like now I'm accepting that this is like what you're actually going to do because you've been doing it for so long. But yeah, it's been the most exciting and blissful 3.5 years of my life, and more happened in that first month And I learned more in that first month, more transformation, more things just happened in my life than had happened in the past like 3 years before that or something. It's amazing. So every day in Krishna consciousness is like a week or a month or something of karmi life. So much happens and there's so much excitement, activity, and now I'm that desire. Actually, I had that desire to come to India since I read those books back in Denver, Ram Dass, and all. Actually before that in college, I just heard a little bit about India and I was like, oh, that's like the place where you go to like be spiritual and like learn more about this. Like I'd had that desire for so long. And then after joining, I was supposed to come here actually 2 years ago. But then some circumstances came up and I gave my ticket to another devotee because he needed to come for his spiritual life and things like that. So I gave up my ticket for him, and then I was supposed to come the year after that, but then it got canceled. And then this year we were, slated to come, and then so many times it was like, oh, we might not go, but finally, it worked out, and I'm here. And so we see that we say that Krishna fulfills all desires, and you can really see it. Even though you might have to wait, you might have to have some patience, but I'm here now, and getting to experience India in a way that I never would have experienced if I just come on my own, because it's a place that's so overwhelming. You don't know where to go, you don't know what to see and what to do. But now I've come with senior devotees, Vishnu Chitta Prabhu, and he's taking us around all these places and explaining the pastimes, explaining the meaning of these different places, and again in a way that I never would have been able to experience. So I'm getting my desire fulfilled times a million to experience India and to be with the devotees here, and it's really inspiring to see what's happening here. So yeah, I feel very blessed, very happy, and looking forward to many more years, hopefully, and practicing Krishna consciousness, and pray that I can stay on this track and continue practicing and make some advancement, and get all these nonsense misconceptions out of my head and get out of Maya hopefully someday and become actually Krishna conscious. So Hare Krishna.